Hello and welcome to this podcast, which is part of a series called Inventing Embodiment. My name is Jonathan Burrows. I'm a choreographer and also a faculty member at the Centre for Dance Research at Coventry University. Last year, my colleagues at CDER met online once a week to talk, and the conversation kept coming back to the question of how we speak about embodiment. This podcast aims to capture some of the research I was fortunate to hear then. My guest this morning is Lily Hayward Smith, who is a research assistant at CDER and is my collaborator on this podcast series. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you, Jonathan. It's nice to be here.
Yes, it's great to have you on. Can you start by telling us a little bit about what you're involved in as a research assistant at the moment, and also perhaps what areas of dance practice and dance scholarship interest you?
Yeah, sure. So my role as research assistant at CDER involves currently quite a lot to do with our communications out to the world. So I'm involved a lot in research events, particularly the CDER Invites event series, which I curate with Kate Marsh, and also working on things like this podcast with you and our website, communicating things through our newsletter to the wider world and our dance community. And I am supporting sort of in small ways, generally lots of individuals in the centre with their projects. So it's kind of hugely varied, but I guess my main focus is at the moment through communications work. One of my other big roles is working on the Journal for Dance and Somatic Practices as an editorial assistant, so working very closely with our publishers at Intellect and the authors and contributors to the journal.
And do you have a background in dance, Lily?
Yes, I do. I actually studied for my BA in dance and professional practice at Coventry University, and then I also went on to do my MA in dance making at Coventry as well, when it was running at the time.
So you've been part of this process of the podcast from the start, and you've heard what other people have been talking about and reflecting upon so far. So like me, your head must be full of different perceptions and points of interest, but it'd be good to hear where you're coming from.
So I think if I look back to sort of where my journey started in my sort of training and then subsequently my practice has been sort of foundationed with somatic practices. That's one of the kind of strongest foundations for me. And I guess the word embodiment, I don't remember it being very, very strong at sort of those beginnings, but for me, working with somatic practices kind of goes hand in hand with some of the ideas of embodiment that we've been sort of talking about and I've been listening to other people discuss. Because for me, somatic practices, and I'm including sort of from body-mind centering to skinner releasing technique to yoga. And those practices for me are about exploring something other than just myself. And sometimes that's going internally more into myself. And sometimes that's looking more externally outside to the wider world, but also going more deeply into my imagination. And I think for me where embodiment comes into that is that often through somatic practices I'm trying to embody something in order to create a deeper experience in my moving.
These images of embodiment, do they resonate in the other work that you're supporting at CDER?
I think they do. I think there's two parts to this for me. I've always felt, because I've come from a place of myself being a dancer, having a dance practice and exploring these things, that I often feel like that comes with me into all of my other work, which might be more admin based and sitting at a desk, computer based. But I feel like those things kind of stay with me, especially in instances where I'm working with the Dance and Somatic Practices conference. I've always felt that organising that conference and working with the people that are coming to share their research as part of that conference, I feel like I have to bring a kind of a somatic sense with me in that. And I think I have to, in a way, embody all of the different ideas and ways of being that those people are coming to that conference with. And I think that helps me to support those people through that experience of the conference. That that does then go forward into the other work that I've been doing. And I know that Kate and I, in our curation of the CDO Invite series, we both, I think, still come from this place of having an experience and an understanding of the kind of dance practice and dance research and other things that people are bringing.
And
does that answer your question?
Yes, and I really appreciate the way you articulated there how forms of embodiment within dance practice can have a profound effect upon the ways that we behave and communicate and imagine in other work and other parts of our lives. Do you have any particular problems or questions with the idea of embodiment?
One thing that I've been particularly thinking about more recently, probably because of working on this with you, is sometimes the idea that we can impose embodiment on other people. An example that I heard was during the kind of one part of the many Black Lives Matter protests, where one of the protesters was in the crowd and was doing a very powerful dance, and the news reader that was describing this said that they embodied the sense of everyone that was part of that protest and part of this movement. And I found that really interesting, knowing what my experience of embodiment is, which is very deeply personal, really. So when thinking about using the word embodiment to say that someone is basically expressing what a large group of other people feel, I find that really interesting, and I'm not sure how that works then, because my question is, does that person know that they are embodying, that whole group of people's feeling or sense of this kind of major thing that's going on? I kind of want to ask them, did you know that you embodied that for these people? And I find that slight assumption or that imposing of embodiment onto someone else a little just tricky in my understanding of what embodiment is.
So in a way, you're observing that there are ways that the word embodiment gets used within wider society that may not accord with how people within dance practice or dance scholarship are thinking about the concept.
Yes, I think that's right. I mean, the word exists outside of our use of it, certainly. It's not only for us. I think, of course, it's going to be used in other contexts, and people will take their own versions of it and in a way what they want from it. And maybe that's one of the slight issues in how we try and encourage other people to understand our use of the word embodiment and what we mean with that word. But I think one of the most clear things for me that's come out of that embodiment has been used in this way is that often we think about, I think about embodiment as being something I'm experiencing, but then I haven't always thought about that in experiencing that embodiment, what am I reflecting back out? And so what that person was doing, were they sending something back out from themselves which led those people to believe that they were embodying such a large thing?
Thank you. That feels like a good place to pause. Thank you, Lily, for sharing those thoughts with us today.
Thank you. It's been really interesting to be part of this whole process with you and listen to everyone's thoughts on the matter.
Yes, and thank you for all your work on it.
You're welcome.